Which country do you think of as being bad at English? Well, let's be honest. It's usually Japan.
Every day baseball and study English. Hey, excited. Go, ganbatte, go. What exciting. His power is good. He's big English teacher.
But how can one of the world's most educated countries still struggle so much with English? You are actually not wrong. But according to the EF English Proficiency Index, Japan is ranked 92nd out of 116 countries, lower than South Korea, China, and many other Asian countries. And given Japan's economic power and high literacy rate, this is honestly shocking. So why is that? The reason might surprise you. One of the biggest reasons Japanese people struggle with English is our own language, Japanese. Japanese and English have completely different word orders. So let me show you what actually happens in our heads. So when we try to speak English, our brain first builds in the sentence in Japanese and then has to rearrange everything into English. For example, 私は昨日友達と映画を見に行った. If we translate it word by word, it becomes yesterday with my friend, movie, to see, went. So even if the words are simple as you see, the order is completely different, and that makes it hard to speak smoothly in real time. And to make it worse, Japanese doesn't have articles, plurals, or clear verb tenses, which means every English sentence comes with extra steps and extra stress for Japanese people. Here is another barrier you might not expect. Many Japanese expressions have no direct English equivalent. So for example, words like よろしくお願いします、お疲れ様, or めんどくさい carry meanings deeply rooted in Japanese culture. Of course, if you are good at let's say speaking English, we can try to express the meaning with different way. So for example, a chair is we can describe it as something to sit, right? If you're not good at speaking English, it's hard to describe in another way. So when we try to speak English, we often realize, I know what I want to say, but there's no natural way to say it. So that feelings makes us think we can't fully express ourselves, and that becomes a huge barrier to fluency. So if you've ever felt that Japanese people's English is hard to understand, there is a reason. Some English sounds simply don't exist in Japanese. For example, R, right, light, and right. To us, all sound almost the same. And even if I know the difference, my tongue just isn't used to those movements. Another nightmare is bus and the bat. They sound identical to my ears, and I had never even tried a foot sound before in my life. Once I even had to scrap a whole video because I thought I was saying bath, but it came out as bus. Because I don't know the difference between the two sounds. Technically I know, but I can't differentiate. So I don't realize I'm saying the wrong word. So in short, the problem isn't just hearing the sound, it's that our tongues and the mouth were never trained to make them. So now that we know the language and the pronunciation challenges, another big question is, what are Japanese people actually learning in school? When I was a student, English education started in elementary school, but the goal wasn't communication, it was passing tests. Classes basically focused on reading and writing, memorizing grammar rules and vocabulary. Speaking and listening were very practiced and pronunciation was almost ignored. Because obviously they weren't needed for exams. I recently checked today's textbook. They are thicker and look more modern, but the core hasn't changed. Still grammar focused and test driven. Even sections like Let's Talk exist, but since they don't affect the scores, teachers often skip them. So that is why so many Japanese people, including me in the past, can understand English but still can't speak it. Another big problem I can't miss is the lack of English-speaking environment. The situation is a bit different now, but even in Tokyo, it's rare to be approached in English. And in rural areas, the need is almost zero. I've lived in Tokyo for about like 10 years already, and I honestly can't remember a single time a stranger spoke to me in English. But here's the surprising part. Countries like, let's say, Mongolia or Kyrgyzstan rank higher than Japan, even though they don't have much more exposure either. I assume that the real difference is motivation. But in many, right, let's say, developing countries, English is life-changing. It can mean a much higher salary or even opportunities abroad. For example, when I lived in Indonesia, the average monthly salary was around like $300. That's less than what someone could earn from just a few online jobs, let's say online video editing in English. In Japan, though, you can live your whole life without English, honestly, and still be fine. So that is why only a small number of people feel a strong motivation to really become fluent. And something many people don't realize is our cultural background. In Japan, making mistakes is often seen as something to be embarrassed about. So let me share what it was like when I was an elementary school student. So the teacher would ask a question and randomly pick a student. If the answer was correct, the whole class shouted, "That's correct." But if it was wrong, everyone shouted, "That is incorrect." So imagine how that feels, right? Especially for young children. When you get it wrong, the entire class immediately rejects your answer. Well, naturally, you become more careful and afraid of making mistakes. Well, this kind of attitude toward failure is like everywhere in Japanese society. It shows up strongly when speaking English. We kind of like feel embarrassed if we can't say something perfectly. So instead of trying, we stay silent. I believe some of you may have visited Japan and felt that people avoid speaking English or seem to ignore you. In many cases, it's not that they can't speak at all, it's that they are too afraid of making mistakes. And the truth is, most Japanese people learn about like 2,500 English words like through school. It's not the lack of knowledge, it's the psychological burden. The fear of being wrong that holds us back. So in the end, it's not just one reason why Japanese people struggle with English, even now. It's our language structure, unique expressions, pronunciation difficulties, a test-focused education system, the lack of an English-speaking environment, and even our cultural attitude toward mistakes. But things are slowly starting to change, with more foreigners in Japan and the weekend making English more relevant in daily life. Maybe we will see more Japanese people actually using the English they have studied. So, what do you think about it? Do these struggles sound familiar or maybe surprising? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment box below. I also cover many other topics beyond English, from everyday challenges to things you'd never expect in Japan. So, feel free to check out my other videos right from here as well. Alright, so thanks so much for watching again and see you in the next video. Bye.